coming up on maybe 8 or 10 years.
8 or 10 years. And what are you practicing? How did you start practicing meditation?
Well, in my case, I think it's always been present from the time I was like 16 or so, but not in a formal way. It was more something, I don't know, that just, it seemed to always have been something called inside of me. I remember when I was 16, I hitchhiked out west, thinking that I was going to discover enlightenment after having read this book of Hermann Hesse on Siddhartha, so about Siddhartha. But it was probably a very romantic way of seeing practice, and also, and at that time, or just a bit before that, I had problems with drugs or whatnot, and it was sort of like a way to get away from consuming what was more like a pothead or whatever. So.
Probably when I first read a book which was a cross-analysis of psychotherapy and Buddhism by Mark Epstein, and I was probably really fascinated by that, as I can remember. Yeah, it's probably that, and then that was probably in, I don't know, last 10 or 11 months ago, maybe a year ago. And so I went to talk to people about it, and eventually joined the college's Buddhist society, and started regularly going to that.
Goes back a long way, since I was a teenager, and Japanese Zen was my first interest. It first caught my eye. I was in Vancouver, and there's a lot of Oriental influence in Vancouver, and so Japanese Zen was most important. But I was very young and I didn't know what to do, and so I got started in meditation with transcendental meditation with the Maharishi, in the era of the Beatles. It also helped that my grandmother was born in India, and so that connection started. And then a little later on I switched to Buddhism, coming back to my first thought.
How was to be a practitioner of Buddhism in the West?
It's a pioneer. So 30 or 40 years ago, there were two main teachers, two main influences, and one was Suzuki Roshi with his Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind book, very simple, very straightforward, very attentive to the North American mind. And then the second teacher was Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche with his Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism, which was amazing in his ability to understand the Western mind. And so this was captivating, very, very intriguing, and very, on the mark. With time, these have become established, and Buddhism is now pretty much mainstream. It's well accepted, it's well understood, basically, in a general sense, or well accepted, perhaps. And so it's a little easier. You're less of a single individual in a great mass of unknowing. So there's lots of people now who practice Buddhism, so it's a lot easier. Still, there's much work to do. We think of it as a kind of a 500-year project.
I heard that you're a social worker in Brooklyn. How is Buddhism helping you with your work? Does it help at all?
It does. There are a lot of things that I'm exposed to in my everyday life as a social worker, and a lot of it is suffering. And this was an opportunity for me to come to a place and be reminded that being around suffering doesn't mean that I have to absorb that. And there's a way that I can find calmness and strength and be able to be a source of loving kindness and compassion for those who are in need. And that there is a way that you can do that without depleting your own joy, your own love, your own source of strength. and I forget that sometimes and find myself in situations where I feel very empty and very diminished. So this is a really good place to kind of restore some of the things that we know, but just going through your daily task you forget, and meditation can really bring you to that center. And some of the things we're learning here can actually be taught to a client so that they can find that inner calmness too when they're in the moment of crisis or in a moment of a lot of pain.
I think the interesting thing for me with meditation, it's not something that you see tremendous changes in short periods of time, or that from one day to the next all of a sudden you're a new person or something. It's really something that's gradual, and it's something that it's more looking back on patterns, or looking back on my life that, I don't react to things the way I used to, or I'm not as triggered by a whole bunch of different events. But it's like, I find it so subtle, the changes, the way they happen. So it's not something that's so obvious, but but definitely, or even like when reactions are there, I don't know, it's not so much, I think what's changed, it's more like this interest in looking at how my mind works, or looking how I react to things, rather than trying to find a remedy not to act or react the way I always have. I think it's more that type of experience anyhow for myself.
Do you feel a happier person now?
Happier. I don't think happy is so much the word, is like more harmony. In other words, I'm not battling, because I think, in this struggle, or in this search to be happy, I think often that's where the conflict is. Like I'm going through a period these past few days where, and even like I find it special to be doing the interview now, because I don't feel like I'm sort of like top-notch with myself. I've been feeling frustrated these past few days and whatnot. So to me, being happy it's more being in harmony with whatever is. It's not so much trying to be a certain way. It's like, well, I feel upset today, well, I'm upset today. And it's just being able to sit and be with feeling upset in that given time, and not struggling. It's really living in the present moment with whoever I am and whatever I am now, and not what I want to be, or how I should be, or how I shouldn't be, or so on. It's more, and I think that's what the whole experience of meditation is for me, is learning to just be more with myself the way I am at any given time, or at every present moment.
What benefits of meditation do you see for a person of your age?
Oh, incredible benefits. You can clearly see when you seriously are sitting. You feel very calm. You feel as though you don't need a distraction anymore. You don't feel uncomfortable or anxious or awkward. You don't feel awkward not doing anything, which is very important. Also, being alone, it teaches you to really sit with yourself and your problems and let things arise. Because sometimes awful stuff will come up, but you have to treat it gently. And that's really important for somebody my age to learn, because if you don't learn it now, it's going to be much harder to learn as you get older. And especially something like that, where it's a mind training technique. The years 18 to 25 are when you have the frontal lobes developing, more seriously, whether it's from a societal perspective or biologically. It happens, and we know this from functional MRIs. And so I think if you're training your mind during that time, it's crucial, absolutely crucial, and it can definitely, put someone's life on track and make them feel okay with them in that situation.
What are the activities that you have done here during the retreat? Could you describe, let's say, from the time you get up to the time you go to bed?
Mm-hmm. So this week we've had a lot of special celebrations, so it's not exactly a typical week, but on a typical day, what we've done is started to wake up around 5:15. We have tea or coffee, and then we gather ourselves to go to the main Abbey, where we begin chants and meditation at 6 a.m. And we do that for about an hour, and then we have some time between meditation and then breakfast, and then we eat in silence together as a group, and then we return back into the sitting room and we do some additional meditation, which is then followed by either an event or like a discussion in the library, and then lunch, and then we devote ourselves about 2 hours for service, where we work with the monastic doing certain projects around the Abbey